Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. Practical spiritual insights to help you live a more joyful, empowered, and grounded life.
Let's grow together. And now, let's have a warm welcome for Reverend Martin with his message, Knowing versus Doing.
I grew up in Indiana, and unlike most kids my age when I was going through school, I was not even remotely into athletic anything. Basketball, football, I did not care. But I was fascinated by things that seemed peculiar to many of my classmates, and among those were musical things. I was fascinated by the piano, and I learned how to play that. I played piano and organ all the time growing up. In school, I played trombone in the marching band and played cello in the orchestra. I was interested in magic, and I learned how to do that. I actually worked my way through college performing magic. I was interested in ventriloquism, and I learned how to do that, and my little sidekick is upstairs right now as we speak. Reggie never comes to the service, but he checks it out on YouTube. I was also fascinated by juggling, and I purchased a little book called Holden's Manual of Juggling, which was at the time the standard reference work. It taught you how to juggle balls and clubs and rings and torches and cigar boxes and derby hats and all kinds of things. But I never actually learned to juggle, even though I read that manual several times. And one day in high school, we had a thing, I can't recall what it was, what they called it, but it was show and tell, basically, although that wasn't what they used as a term. And one of the kids in the class got up and proceeded to do some three-ball juggling, and he was really, really good. And everybody was surprised, and they said, "How did you learn how to do that?" And he said, "Well, I saw a juggler on TV, and I just copied what he was doing." And I said, "Well, then you know that when you did this pattern, you were doing the shower." And he says, "No, I didn't know that." And I said, "And furthermore, when you did this pattern, that's known as a cascade." He says, "Well, I didn't know that." And I proceeded to show off a little bit with my knowledge. And finally, he cut me off, handed me the three balls and said, "Let's see you do it." Well, I couldn't do it because I'd never actually taken action on what it was that I knew. However, it wasn't a total waste. Over the years, I worked with several jugglers and even hired a couple of jugglers to be in my show at one point, and I was able to carry on an intelligent conversation with them about the art of juggling because I had at least head knowledge of how the thing worked. Now, there's an old Chinese proverb that says, "To know and not to do is not to know." Have you ever noticed that it's so much harder to do something than it is to know about that very same thing? And this is the challenge to all of us at times. Knowing about something is different from being able to do it consistently. Now, as students of religious science and New Thought, it behooves us to get as much knowledge about our philosophy as possible. And fortunately, never in human history have spiritual wisdom and teaching been more accessible or plentiful. The greatest teachings of the greatest minds of the ages are available to us at little or no cost. But Jesus said, "If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them." And the operative word here, of course, is do. We transform our lives not by knowing things, but by acting on our knowledge. And the newcomer to our philosophy who practices spiritual principles will manifest far greater things than the advanced student who studies the philosophy merely as an intellectual exercise. You hear the saying, "Is knowledge power?" And we heard about that during last week's lesson. Well, let me answer that question, "Is knowledge power?" by asking another question. Is gasoline power? Not if it's sitting in an underground tank at the Texaco station. You've got to pump it from underground into your car's fuel tank. Now is gasoline power? Nope, not until you start your engine. Great engineers with impressive mechanical knowledge and experience put 300 horsepower under your car's hood. But unless someone turns on the ignition, there is no power. And it's the same with knowledge. It's potentially power, but it must be put to use. Just reading a book and doing nothing with it, with the ideas that it contains, is a waste of time. And I must confess, I did that for years. I bought oodles and gobs of self-help, personal development, and success books, looking for the one that would change my life. And none of them did me any real good, for a very simple reason. Every time the author advised the reader to close the book and get a paper and pencil and start making a list, or close the book and pick up the phone, or close the book and get started doing push-ups, I would just turn the page and keep reading. I didn't really want to do anything. I was hoping that just by reading some magic words, my life would change for the better. Several years ago, there was a crackpot idea making the rounds. Put a book beneath your pillow, and somehow the contents of that book would enter your subconscious mind while you sleep. Now that's ridiculous, but is it any more absurd than the idea that just reading something will change your life? So, I was reading the right things, but I wasn't getting anything out of them because I wasn't applying what I'd learned, which, as a practical matter, isn't much different from learning anything at all. And it didn't help that some of the classic success books have misleading titles. One of the worst offenders is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, that is actually a great book, and it's been responsible for inspiring countless thousands to achieve financial success. But they didn't find wealth just by thinking. The book lays out the principles for achievement, but makes it clear that work is required. As Napoleon Hill himself said, action is the real measure of intelligence. It's about being a doer as opposed to being a theorist. There are two types of learning, that you can do throughout your life. One is acquiring knowledge through books, videos, articles, school, etc. And that's what I would refer to as secondhand knowledge or secondhand experience. And the other way to learn is through firsthand experience, actual application, through trial and error, possibly through mistakes, through learning directly from someone else, such as a mentor, being out in the real world. I ran across a blogger this week who had this observation about knowing versus doing. She writes, "I've learned a lot of things over the years that have been very helpful to me and the people in my life that God has called me to minister to. But one of the things I've learned is that learning by itself doesn't do much for you. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't apply it, if you don't do anything with it, it doesn't make much difference." Exhibit A. With everything I've learned about exercise, weight loss, and nutrition, all the books, magazines, medical journal articles I've read, and all the doctors, nutritionists, therapists, and personal trainers I've talked to, and the thousands of dollars that I've spent on equipment, programs, and supplements, with all that, I could have a PhD in the subject. Seriously, ask me anything, including why I've spent the past 25 years ducking out of family photos, gaining and losing the same 30, 40, 50 pounds again and again. Knowing what to do and doing it are not the same thing. Exhibit B. There have never been enough hours in the day for all the things I want to do, need to do, feel obligated to do. With all the books, blog posts, and articles I've read, all the workshops and webinars I've seen, all the experts I've met, and the thousands of dollars I've spent at the office supply store, I could have a PhD in goal setting, prioritization, and organization. Seriously, ask me anything. My friends do. I'm a fountain of helpful organizational strategies, which I really enjoy sharing. But knowing what to do and doing it are not the same thing. So we have to take action, but not just any action will do. To take effective action, you have to understand your personal situation and the goals you're trying to achieve. It's hard to connect knowledge and action without clear goals. Achieving results is hard when you don't know what you need or want. We did a workshop here recently on how to know what you really want. And I heard from several of the participants who were happy to move beyond vague notions of a better life to specific and clear goals that they can pursue. And once you've established that baseline for action, being clear about what you want out of life, then you can start applying the right knowledge to solve specific life challenges. Leonardo da Vinci said that every action needs to be prompted by a motive. Now, we offer classes throughout the year that can transform every aspect of your life. And the real value in classes is not in studying books. We do that, of course, because we want to learn the principles and the practices that have stood the test of time. But the real value is that we assign activities that cause you to use what you've learned. And we get to discover what works for us, and we get to share those experiences with the class. Knowing, doing, and sharing are essential keys to spiritual growth. The Buddha said, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. While knowing that something is a necessary first step, it's the application of that knowing, that knowledge, through action that leads to tangible results, personal growth, and progress. That knowing-doing gap is a common challenge, as many people understand what they should do, but they struggle to translate that understanding into action. So here's a breakdown of the key differences. First of all, knowing. Knowing is simply awareness of information. And what we need to do is move beyond that simple awareness, because real knowing involves understanding concepts, facts, or principles. And you can't really know something until you understand it. That Buddha quote again, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And it has to go beyond intellectual understanding. It's the cognitive process of grasping information. And understanding involves experience and experimentation. A working knowledge is the result of activity. And we can even learn passively. Knowledge can be acquired just through learning or observing. And we sometimes learn passively quite by accident. This is how babies learn, after all. They don't learn from books. They learn by getting into anything and everything that looks interesting, much to their parents' occasional chagrin. So our starting point is this. knowledge is a crucial foundation for action, but it's not enough on its own. It's like IKEA assemble-it-yourself furniture. Even if you're smart enough to make sense of the instructions, and I'll admit that that's been a challenge for me in the past, unless you start putting the parts together, you'll be sitting, eating, or sleeping on the floor. So we move on to doing. And this is where we come into active application. Doing involves putting knowledge into practice through actions and behaviors. Knowledge is helpful for sure, but until we use it in some way, it's just theory. So it's about actively engaging with what you know. And this requires effort, and it may require courage. Taking action can involve overcoming challenges, fear, and procrastination. And in the moment, it may be somewhat unpleasant. Mark Twain said, "The man who picks up a cat by the tail learns something he can learn in no other way." Action leads to results and growth. It's been said that a goal is a dream with a deadline. And doing is what turns ideas into goals and allows for personal development. So we arrive at that knowing-doing gap, the disconnect between knowledge and action. The gap refers to the discrepancy between what someone knows they should do and what they actually do. And so we could think of this as being barriers in action. Common reasons for this gap include fear of failure, procrastination, lack of motivation, perfectionism, a lack of clarity. Examples would be knowing that exercise is good for you, but not exercising. Knowing you should eat healthier, but not changing your diet. Or knowing that you need to end a toxic relationship, but not doing anything about it. And add to that list analysis paralysis, the never-ending quest to acquire more information. Because the future is a mystery, we'll never know everything about the new venture we're stepping into until we actually step into it. As Martin Luther King Jr. told us, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. So how do we bridge the gap? Well, there are several things we can keep in mind, and one of them is to start small. That is to say, to break down large tasks or goals into smaller, more manageable steps. And that involves setting realistic goals. Now, that means we need to focus on achievable goals that can be built upon. Now, we know that we live in an infinite universe, which is full of limitless opportunities. But we also know that some achievements are easily within our grasp, while others may not be for us right now because we need to grow into them. Oh, we can get there, but it may take personal growth to do it. Knowledge is a wonderful thing, but perhaps one of the best things we can do is to, in the words of the ancient Greek mystery schools, know thyself. Know thyself. Cultivate self-motivation. Identify your reasons for wanting to take action and use those reasons as fuel. And while you're in the process, don't forget to practice self-compassion. Recognize that setbacks do happen and focus on consistent progress. It's easy to put yourself down when you fall short of the mark. And maybe it's even easier for those of us who study this spiritual philosophy. Knowledge of your infinite nature and potential may make you even more upset when you let yourself down. But we must remember that we are works in progress with an eternity to grow into greater and greater expressions of spirit. Here's a little idea for you. Seek accountability. Share your goals with others and ask for support. Having a prayer partner or a workout buddy or a friend with whom we can discuss our fondest dreams and aspirations. That helps us keep on track, whatever goal we may be pursuing. So embrace action. We're learning new things all the time, and the pursuit of knowledge has its rewards. But just don't focus on learning, actively work to apply what you learn. While knowledge provides a useful foundation, it's through consistent action, despite challenges and potential setbacks, that individuals can truly achieve their goals and create positive change in their lives. So, be your own action hero. The story is told of a salesman traveling the back roads trying to sell books about modern agriculture to farmers. And one old fellow he called upon asked, "Why should I learn any of this stuff?" And the salesman replied, "This book has the newest scientific techniques for growing crops. Read it, and you'll have the very latest farming know-how." Well, the farmer thought for a moment and finally replied, "Well, heck, I ain't doing half the stuff I know to do now." And so it is with most of us. Our work as practitioners of this philosophy is not so much in the treatment we say as in our embodiment of its meaning. We don't need to be the prayer, the one who prays, as much as we need to be the prayer. That is, we don't need to be the one praying as much as we need to be the prayer that we pray. And perhaps that's the true meaning of Paul's instruction to pray without ceasing. Our work is effective only in such degree as we become whatever it is we're praying for. Knowledge by itself is not power, but there is a universe of power in action that is backed up by right knowing. In the textbook, Ernest Holmes says what I just referenced, that the answer to prayer is in the prayer. Now, both those words are spelled exactly alike, but I think what he meant was prayer is the thing that we do, and the prayer is the one that's doing the praying. So I take that to mean that we will demonstrate our good according to our ability to become what we pray for. Knowledge is not necessarily power, but again, there is unlimited power behind every action that springs from right knowing. One of the greatest mountain climbers of the 20th century was a Scotsman named W.H. Murray. Most of his climbs took place before World War II. When that war began, he joined the Scottish Highlanders Regiment, and he was captured and spent 3 years in Nazi prisoner of war camps. And while imprisoned, Murray wrote a book on mountaineering. And the first draft of that book was written on the only paper available to him, rough toilet paper. The manuscript was found by the guards and destroyed by them. And to the amazement of his fellow prisoners, Murray's response to this loss was to start again, despite the risk that he might lose this one too, and despite the fact that he was so depleted, such in poor physical condition from the near starvation diet, so much so that he believed he might never finish the book, let alone ever climb again. But the rewritten work was finally published in 1947, and it was widely credited with helping to inspire the post-war renaissance in the sport of mountain climbing. And one of his last climbs was in 1951, and he later wrote about the obstacles his team faced getting that expedition organized and how he dealt with those obstacles. He despaired at one point that things weren't happening as he would have liked. It seemed to him that nothing was being done. But what he learned through experience was that the most important thing was to get started. to swing into action. And he wrote about the beginning phase of this project. When I said that nothing had been done, I erred in one important matter. We had definitely committed ourselves and were halfway out of our ruts. We had put down our passage money. We booked a sailing to Bombay. Now, this may sound too simple, but it is great in consequence. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance, which no one could dream would have come his way. I learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Years later, the sportswear manufacturer, Nike, said much the same thing in 3 words, just do it. And it's true. When you move beyond knowledge to the arena of action, you'll be inspired by the amazing people, places, and things that pop up once you begin. The most successful people take action and move forward. They create new opportunities. They change things. They make a difference in their lives and the lives of those they love. Tom Watson, the founder of IBM, explained the phenomenal early success of his company. He said, IBM is what it is today for 3 special reasons. The first reason is that at the very beginning, I had a very clear picture of what the company would look like when it was finally done. You may say that I had a model in my mind of what it would look like when the dream, my vision, was in place. And the second reason was that once I had that picture, I then asked myself how a company which looks like that would have to act. And I then created a picture of how IBM would act when it was finally done. And the third reason IBM has been so successful was that once I had a picture of how IBM would look when the dream was in place and how such a company would have to act, I then realized that unless we began to act that way from the very beginning, we would never get there. In other words, I realized that for IBM to become a great company, it would have to act like a great company long before it ever became one. Watson is talking about the power of acting as if you've already achieved your goals. And once you know what you want and where you want to be, start acting today as if you're already there. You'll be astounded at the changes you'll see in your life. Dare to be great. Create your vision, then take action. Live it, starting now, just like IBM. Successful people are constantly looking for ways to improve their lives and their work and their progress toward their goals. People willing to take action, go above and beyond to succeed in life. Action shows you that you're capable of doing something because you've reached a point where you know how to do it. And if you'd like some simple, specific action steps to follow, you might give these a try. Commit to doing at least 3 things every day that are consistent with your vision and move toward your goal. Keep a journal of 3 to track those actions. Write down your actions as you do them each day. Remember, actions create energy and momentum. Keeping a journal will help you capitalize on that momentum and will also remind you of just how much you've accomplished. So don't wait to be the person you want to be. Start today. Act as if you're already there, and you'll arrive much sooner. You can make a difference in your life when you close the gap between knowledge and action. Nothing happens until something changes. Truly smart people focus on getting results. You are the sum of your actions. Be your own action hero. And whatever you can dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And so it is.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Spiritual Wisdom Weekly. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, follow us on social media at Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living, and support our work, including this podcast, at gocsl.org. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.